Okay, are we ready?
We are now.
Now that the man is here with the right chair, we're ready to go. Thank you. Thank you for waiting. I'll call the meeting to order. Is there a motion to accept the minutes from March 20th? So moved by Dave. Second by Jen. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I set out the auction list. The first car was already sold and declared surplus already. I just wanted you guys to know that the person who bought it didn't take it, and they reached out to the next in line and they didn't want it either. So it's going back up. And then there's a Dodge Caravan on there. The other two are trucks. I didn't know if you wanted me to auction them the way we did to the other municipalities and see how that goes, or if you just wanted me to throw it on the auction list. Throw it on the auction.
I tend to agree with Cassie that if somebody shows an interest in the vehicle after you list it to the board, then that would be different. If nobody shows interest in it, that I'd send it right to you.
We need a motion for that. Cassie motion, Dan second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Question back earlier, when somebody buys something on the auction and then they don't pay for it, are they on some bad list or how does the auction company handle that? You know, otherwise, somebody buying all the time and then we got to send it back through. There's no cost to us, but you might the auction house wouldn't like that. So there ought to be. And I didn't know if you knew if they
I don't
put them
know.
on the bad boy list for not paying.
It doesn't happen often, which is good, at least with ours. I think it happened with some pumps once or something a long time ago.
Just interesting.
Okay, so. They're all surplus.
Give that we vote. Yeah. Yeah, they all, everybody waved their hand, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Next up is a loader purchase. We received 4 quotes for this and 2 were compliant. So permission to award the quote or the purchase to Capital Tractor for $135,835.05.
Moved by Dave. Second. Second by Dan.
What was the next one that was compliant? How much?
That was. Prius, it was $158,844.50.
More discussion?
Was it budgeted for?
Yes.
All in favor of accepting the bid?
Aye.
Vote.
Next up, we put out a salt bid. This is the first time we've done it through the county instead of the OGS. And we would like to award the bid to the low bidder for American rock salt. That was all passed out, the result. We have rock salt, treated salt, and there was no bid for solar salt.
Didn't the closest to it?
I don't know if they're the closest.
Oh, can't be much down.
There was a whole thing about buy American salt, and there was a rule that was passed, and it was misinterpreted by a lot of entities that were foreign. It was a New York State thing. And in the end, they met with OGS over the past week, and it was all hashed out. So our hope is that Atlantic bids on the OGS, because we also put in a quantity for OGS, because if Atlantic wins, their salt is really nice to work with.
So we're not gonna accept bids till we find out, or we're gonna accept the bid in advance.
But we're gonna accept this bid because we didn't put in our full procurement to OGS. Because if this bid is cheaper than the OGS, then it's better. It's a little bit, it's, buying salt is, I thought it was like gambling. Jimmy describes it as like the mafia. It's, you just can't, it's just kind of hard to, you know, there's all these rules for, you have to put in how much you're procuring. You have to take at least 70 of that. Like we are filling our salt barns right now because we didn't buy 70% last year. So we didn't need 70%. If you go over 120%, the cost is more. So there's all these rules and there's no real easy way to come to the best way to do it. So we've decided that for our department, the best way to, and Warren County is doing the same thing. They put out a salt bid, they're accepting their bid and they're putting in OGS.
Can you remind us what that is, first of all?
4, I think it was 84. It was right around 84. This one is a little bit lower.
So it's down from much.
Well, yes.
So,
I know Deb and I discussed this earlier. My highway superintendent is not in favor of it because the tradition with the company that has won the bid is that you lose about 30% of the weight of the salt after delivered because of the moisture that comes out of it. So whatever that means, I'm not a salt guy. I know, but he's been doing it for 30+ years.
Well, they don't cover it. So we tried to address that in our bid. We talked about that and we're fully prepared to reject it. It doesn't meet our specs. But then again, when you get to the middle of winter, you need salt, you need salt. You know, we're trying to have as many options as we can.
One more question. Melissa, how would this tie into the policy we're looking at?
Best value.
Want to fill it out?
This one was a bid that was put out with Barb, so best value wasn't part of that.
But
But if we didn't accept it now, could we go on best value?
Always.
and
Would that maybe make a difference? I don't know.
is best value a, so is it, does it have to say best value in the bid, or do we have to say, okay, this salt is really nice salt, we want this salt, but it's $2 more than the
So
other salt?
The best value is just allowing you to utilize bids that were already awarded by other entities, right? State contracts. We always talk about source. Well, yeah, they're not bids that we're putting out looking for best value. The ones that are already established. So it allows us a lot more choices.
So then if there's a choice that we want to make that is between one company that we're not super happy with their salt and another company that we are super happy with their salt, could we address that at the committee meeting?
Where are you getting these companies? Like, what are you talking, where are you picking these that you're comparing?
The situation is.
It's not, if it's a bid we put out, we're not doing it, right? We're not considering best value for bids that like Barb puts out or you put out. We're not incorporating best value in those. Best value allows you to utilize bids that were already awarded by Sourcewell or all the state contracts.
So if the state uses best value, you
Right.
could then use the state.
Or before we couldn't.
So it's not an option to buy the salt that we want if it's
If it's
not
your
an
bid.
option. If it's our bid.
okay.
If the state buys the Atlantic salt.
Yep.
And that's why
So we can,
they need to piggyback off that state
yes,
price.
that's correct.
Well, yes, but we're putting our bid into OGS in hopes that Atlantic gets the bid. That's what has been, that's who it's been. We're trying to get the salt.
Okay.
Right, but we have the right, if we find product superior, to reject the bid and go with the next one up that we want. So if one is $30 and we found quality problems with it, for whatever reason, we can reject that bid and go with one $35. So
Yeah.
that's how it's covered in this.
What's the danger of the committee rejecting this bid and we hope that the OGS one is better program.
The OGS could be at American Rexall. It could be what we're getting anyway, and it could be.
What's the main one? Go ahead, Brian.
Are we gonna buy out both bids? In
It
the
depends.
OGS comes through, because I gotta believe, you said that you had a certain amount in the OGS and not all of it. So some would still be coming out this bid,
Depending on the winner, yes.
okay.
When the OGS, I was telling you about the OGS, and it has the 70%, which is, it's actually now 50%. So you have to guarantee that you're gonna buy 50% of what you put in for your quantity. And if you pay over 100, if you buy over 120% cost more. With our bid, there's none of that in there. And that's the way most of the county, well, all of the counties who put out their bids are like that. They don't have minimums and maximums.
Committee want to make a motion to accept the salt bid?
I think you're basically looking to have options, so when push comes to shove, you have multiple sources you can pull salt from.
Yes, we've
I'm with
talked at length over this.
Moved by Kathy, second by Dave.
Purchase off of this.
Right, so she sourced it out 2 different places. So there's some of it is on this bid, and then they're hoping to buy some off the
So what
OGS.
did you just move?
That it for the bid.
To buy them all off of this?
No,
No,
to do it,
just to accept
accept
that
the
bid.
bid. I just
Did you have
need to
the 30
accept the bid.
days? This price is good for 30 days.
I don't think so.
But I think also what you were, if I understood right, what you're also looking for is in the middle of February, when all New York State is covered with ice and you can't find salt anywhere, you have the option to go with where you bid it off OGS, and you have the option to source it from here. You've got 2 places to try and find it when push comes to shove.
Yep.
That's what the bottom line is.
All things all through there.
Are we obligated to purchase some from this?
No, there's no minimum or maximum in
Okay,
here.
thank you.
We're just having options.
How does this impact the towns?
So the towns,
You asked the towns, or the towns can go on this bid with you?
yes,
Right.
It's on
And
this sheet there.
OGS wasn't the cutoff yesterday. If the towns say they're gonna go, like talking about highway, system, go with the county bid because it's cheaper. Yet you might, do we don't have to put a quantity in, we can just keep getting it at that 81 through the county?
yes,
without
if we
any-
accept this.
And American Salt, if it came in cheaper, we're out of the picture, right? Because we didn't go with OGS at all.
Yes, that's right.
So we missed that vote for us, no matter what.
Unless you have a consolidated barn and you have one pile.
Huh?
Unless you have a consolidated barn and you have one salt pile, and we meter it out and pay the county.
Well, that means we're getting it from the county. Are we picking it up from you, the town?
No, this is just like the OGS bid
Right,
for you,
For us,
for
yeah.
Easton, yep. And this doesn't change any of our relationships with the towns and how they get their salt from our salt pilot, because Putnam does that, Fortian does that.
that's why.
Yep. Yep, but there's no minimums in this, so, or maximums in this. So we told the towns what we were doing and assumed that they would do the same thing. So if you
Okay.
don't accept this bid for the town, for the town of Easton, like, if we don't accept this bid and you guys didn't put in an OGS bid,
Right, you may not get some.
You may not get
You're
any.
on your own.
We led the horses to water.
We can't make them drink.
Give them salt.
So that's how it impacts. I mean, we've gotta, if we didn't do OGS, we've gotta prove this so that we have to.
I would say yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that clears that right up.
Okay, any more discussion on the motion? All in favor, accept the bid? Aye. We got there. Okay.
So Shushan Bridge, tomorrow, we are grinding the bridge and grooving the bridge. Now, that's not us, that's the contractor who's doing that. So at the DPW level, we're pretty excited about this because we need some of our bridges ground and grooved. The reason that we've never been able to do that is there's only 2 places that we know of that do this, and they're both from Ohio. So the mobilization has always been too much for us. So since they're already here, they gave us a quote to do 5 of our bridges that we want done. For example, there's one on County Route 49 right near North Road where you're going around a corner. There's one in County Route 47 that's similar. So the traction is not the greatest. There's no history of accidents at these places, but it would be safer and better if we were able to group them. So my question is, the total is $15,450. So I'm asking if we can waive quoting requirements from the purchasing and do this, right?
Yes, you're asking for a waiver.
Can you give us an idea of the magnitude of the mobilization?
The mobilization for each bridge was, well, I guess, so it was at the same amount as the bridge. So the mobilization was $2,500. Since they're already here, they waiving the mobilization. But if they have to come back, it would be $2,500 for each bridge. It is, the prices range from $2,000 to $2,500 for 4 of the bridges and $6,300 for one of the bridges, because that one has to be ground. That's on County Route 30 in Salem. That's a rideability issue instead of a rail issue.
So it'd be considerably more with the mobilization.
Yep.
Yeah. Some of these rules affect professional bikers.
That's what they go cross with.
I mean, the state grooves on their bridges. They're longitudinal grooves, so I don't know if that helps them, hurts them.
They are.
I don't know.
I was just worried about getting new people.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
I don't know if
that's the expert.
I thought he was talking about motorcycles. Oh, no,
I keep
they're
on
not
my
on
finger
the tour of the
look,
back
because
and
fingers
everything.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
They are deep grooves anyway.
I believe they're quarter inch.
Quarter inch.
So what are magnitude on savings, $10,000?
Oh, yeah.
Can't wait.
Oh, yes.
The motion to waive the procurement.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion to waive procurement, second. All in favor of that?
Aye.
We need a motion to go ahead and use this.
I think if it's waived, we're good, right?
Correct.
Okay.
You got the money in the budget, right?
Yeah, we're taking it out of our bridge budget. Yep.
Okay.
I just wanted to tell you that there's bridge closures coming up. One is in Fort Edward on County Route 46. That's the one that we have a red flag for that we have to fix. One is on County Route 31. That if the state inspected it, would have had a red flag, but they don't need it.
Questions on that?
Starting May 22nd.
We'll be done by June 1st.
Next year. Jinx us. That is all I have.
One more for Deb.
You're gonna bring up the signs.
I'm gonna get quotes first. Have all my information. Anticipate the question. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe. Back to the next.
First thing, request for a waiver from procurement policy as well. We've got a couple of projects that have come on table in the last, I don't know, month or two, I guess. And that require third-party engineering. And what I want to do is, what I wanted to do was RFP that. But the timing of it isn't going to be very helpful. So I'd like to be able to go out in a couple of different engineering firms and get some pricing and pick one and have them. And the RFP asks for a 5-year contract, which is good, I think. And the RFP has been advertised. Just in case I don't get the waiver here, I wanted to be ahead of the game, so we put it out anyway. Can't really wait till the end of June to get going on this. One of the projects is the CHPE, the power line coming through Fort Edward. We've got to get going on reviewing their plans, having an engineer review their plans and make sure we're being safe. Another one is Irving Tissue has a project that they're moving forward with, and we're going to need to review their engineering work as well. Those are just two. And then any developments that pop up, smaller sewer projects that we need some engineering help on, we'd use that for that as well.
So it's a time.
It's a timing thing, unfortunately.
Do you expect a big difference in price because of the timing? I mean, if it's by not going to RFP and getting quotes, are you expecting a?
No, because basically the RFP is saying, give me your pricing sheet for your staff, because they're going to charge you by
That's what they're gonna
the
give you.
time, right, right.
Joe, we do have another committee meeting at the end of the month, if that would help with the RFP.
It has to get advertised, then you have to give them time to respond, and then you have to review that and pick. So by then it would be the end of June. You know what I mean, for the award. So
I didn't know if it was us.
no, it's just the timing of the advertising and things like that.
So to clarify, the waiver that you're looking for isn't just for an engineer for the upcoming project that has to start right away. It's for 5
Yeah.
years and all.
I just assume keep the term. You know.
So whoever gets awarded this will
Yes.
be your engineer for the next 5 years.
Yes. And we had piggybacked with the county with their, they had like a general engineering contract as well. We did that for the roof projects that we did at the plant and the HVAC. And I just wasn't real comfortable with them moving out into the street and handling that type of civil engineering. So wanted to go out on our own. And the timing didn't work out for Matt and I to work. His contract doesn't expire until July, something like that. So I couldn't wait. Didn't want to.
Make a motion.
Second, by Mr. Fisher, discussion?
Now, does that have to come back here to be awarded? Can the district award that then? It's not an RFP.
It's not a bid, it doesn't do award.
Right.
All right. Just wanted to clarify.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Next up, we finally have a final draft of our updated sewer use ordinance. The sewer use ordinance will cover sewer district 1 and sewer district 2. I think I gave a memo, just 3 or 4 bullet points from some changes within that sewer use ordinance. Those are the main changes. And correct me if I'm wrong, Roger, we need to set a date for a public hearing because that's a local law that needs to be changed or updated.
Yes.
Right. And I'm wondering if we can set that for the May meeting.
I haven't seen the local law yet, I don't
Right,
know any
right.
either, so.
Well, you will.
Right, you have to introduce it in May and set the public hearing.
Okay.
Has the commissioner seen the local law?
Yes.
And they're agreeable with it.
And that was, I'm gonna put it on our webpage as a draft. Once we have the local law date, that'll go on there, or the public hearing date too, that'll go on our webpage as well. We can put it on a banner on the county webpage. Whatever, it will be out there. It's just, you know, I wasn't gonna make 15 copies of it. You can go online and look at it and read it.
Is there a motion to set public hearing date for Cassie moves it? Second by Dave. Any questions, discussion?
I'll email the link to that webpage. To them and, look forward to.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Next is a rejection of a bid. We bid an electric half-ton pickup truck that came in, I don't know, $30,000 more than budgeted. And I don't know why the number we budgeted was the number that we budgeted. It was pretty low, but anyway, so we just have to formally reject that mini bid, $129.49. From
Second. Moved by Dave, second by Dan.
we're hemming and hawing whether or not we're gonna do another bid for a gas truck. It was for the plant, which an electric makes sense in my mind anyway. I realize there's all sorts of argument and opinions. But that truck doesn't travel far, mostly around town to pick up supplies and once in a while to shuffle people to training and things like that. But it would have made sense for the plant. We'll go with the gas if we make that decision.
Voting to reject the bid. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Just lastly, I didn't put this on there. We are advertising pretty much every vacant position we have in the sewer district. There's probably 6 jobs posted on the county website. They're being sent out to Indeed, LinkedIn, professional organizations. So they're being advertised all over. Just to keep you up to speed.
Go ahead, Dan.
I'm just curious, if you have 6 openings, how many employees do you have?
Out of 25 full-time, we
25
have 8 vacant positions.
8 out of 25. 30%.
Really good.
How did you end up with your guy you were trying to send for training in the 2-week process? Did that come to fruition or not?
No, we haven't pushed that yet.
Okay.
Kind of dropped back a little bit. I think we need to get a trainee that we can send to that. And I haven't approached that. I just think he's not going to be able to do that. I'm just going to move forward
Well,
with
you claimed that he couldn't do the every week.
every
thing,
week, right?
But you
Yeah.
thought you could maybe get him to do the 2-week one, but he wasn't interested or? you
No,
didn't know?
I didn't even go there. He's the only guy in that position we have there now. If he wants to go, we'll get him up there when he can go. I talked to the chief operator, got his opinion, and his opinion was, let's do this. So that's what we're doing.
So I got a question. You say you have 8 vacant, you're only advertising 6.
Yeah, there's dual positions. There's 2 operator trainees. Yeah,
6 different ones.
Any other questions for Joe?
and there aren't that many applicants. So I don't know.
Trying to work with it.
We're just trying to fill in what we can fill in.
Something else for Joe? Anything else to bring before the committee?
Yes, in February, we tabled, it's what, the lock 8 replacement graves. And it was all based on IDA through the UTEP. And I was satisfied with the UTEP, I don't know how everybody else feels.
I don't think it met our resolution.
No,
Maybe we can pull up the resolution, and see the different results, but I think there was a few that were not
but they have to go to the town, right?
enforced over. not for all.
But I don't think it affects this bridge. This, we need to get this done. Now we got the CHPE, we got our electric in there. We got people interested in that. I just think we need to move forward with the placement of the bridge.
Nobody's stopping them from moving forward. They can go ahead and move forward. If the IDA wants to replace the bridge, they can. Nobody's stopping.
Roger, so if it got tabled and it's not acted on at the following meeting, then it's a dead issue, right?
Right.
So you can start all over, and there can be a motion today to do the Marticelli and just do the whole thing all over again, right? Okay.
I'll make a motion that we've got to send it to the full board, right?
We've got a motion first, Dana. Is there a second to the motion?
I'm not sure what the motion's for.
It's,
Be the lead agency for the Marticelli or something.
Why
Dana?
don't we put it on the agenda for the next meeting rather than do it on the other? So we can have time to figure out what it's going to be.
okay, that's up to you.
No, we can put it right on the agenda.
If we could see the resolution that we passed the Board of Supervisors about what we want UTEP to say, so then we can compare it to what UTEP says.
I guess that's the input I'm looking for, because I was happy with what they came out with.
Okay,
Maybe
So-
so something.
I think that if you look at the resolution, we cannot direct the Warren County board members how they will vote. They unanimously voted against doing that because they have a different consideration of what they want out of UTEP. I got this clarification from Roger. So
Well, the resolution directs, so let's go to our resolves here. So that directs and instructs its appointed members, its appointed members to the county board of Washington IDA. To ensure that any IDA, UTEP, or other policy that provides for tax abatement requires the affirmative consent of any taxing entity whose revenues or operations will be affected prior to that tax abatement or exemption being granted. And it further, the board directs and instructs its appointed members to ensure that the IDA's UTEP and other exemption policies contain a provision that any abatement or exemption proposal will be accompanied by an analysis of the expected return on investment for that exemption. For the resolve, the board further directs and instructs its members as part of their duty to the people of Washington County to ensure close and keeping communication and cooperation with all municipalities and taxing within the IDA's jurisdiction. And finally, resolve that the direction and instructions also provided in the case of any abatement or exemption to be considered or granted by the civic development authority, which is good. So we did what we could do, which was direct our appointed members to vote, or we indicated our wishes. So it's an equal membership.
members, we have that 6 votes.
Right, so somebody would have to defend. I guess would be the point.
Nobody's stopping the IDA. from replacing the bridge. They don't interrupt.
Brian?
I think what was tabled, that Mr. Fisher's talking about, I think we have seen before. I don't think he's asking for anything different than what was tabled. Am I correct on that?
Correct. I think bottom line, this is not about the IDA. This is about Fort Edward. This is about Fort Edward's assessment. This is about getting jobs in Fort Edward and benefiting not only Fort Edward, but the whole county. You know, you're not voting against the IDA. You're voting against Fort Edward if you don't let this go, because there's no way that the IDA can afford to do the job without the Marticelli funds. So that's the bottom line. This is about Fort Edward. It's not about.
It's about getting. How about he said the canal side energy part for jobs and.
So 64 was tabled, that was the Marticelli, which is the stock resolution we have to do for the state under the Marticelli program. We call them Marticelli resolutions. That was 64, that was tabled. It didn't come up again in March. Therefore, it would have to be reintroduced all over again, renumbered. We go forward from there.
I'll start with Dana Happy at his hand first.
David, there's 10 members of the IDA, you need 6 to do anything, right? That's the board vote. So how could you do these things that against what we wanted? I mean, the whole membership, the Warren County guys, is that because you did not enact change, you kept older existing policies, so therefore you don't need a majority, 6 votes to do those things?
We need a majority, 6 votes.
You had-
All five Warren County members voted against it.
So who was the one with Washington County that voted against? Because that, you don't get 6 yet, unless you get 1 from Washington County.
Doesn't matter if you call a vote, you don't have 6 votes, it fails.
So the motion was to institute a UTEP with those requirements, and that failed. Is that what you're saying,
So it
Mr. O'Brien?
defaulted to the.
Correct.
what was
So it
existing.
defaulted to the old one, right?
It defaulted to the ones that,
Okay. So because you did not do, you're not getting consent from towns unless it's solar. You're not getting consent from towns on all pilots unless that town is on what's now Appendix A, it used to be Appendix N, now it's Appendix A. So the first resolution was not abided by. Ensure that you have return on investment. I think that's, you can fudge those numbers in the way you want. Communications, I understand the Warren County didn't want to do the communication part done, but didn't Governor Hochul mandate that IDAs have to communicate with towns? So why would the Warren County guys be against that? That makes no sense. Is it because they didn't want to be told what to do?
I think that, I won't speak to them, but if I was looking at it, if we had Warren County telling us what to do, what do you think our response would be?
If it's a good idea,
Then you lead the charge.
any idea, if it's a good idea, it doesn't matter where it comes from.
Carol?
Is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that County taking the lead on the Marcelli project didn't necessarily offer any exemption or abatement. Is that a correct statement? Or am I incorrect?
I don't think it has anything to do with.
Right, nothing to do with each other.
But that's my point. It's not-
Exactly.
So back to the question at hand, about moving forward with a potential project that could benefit one of our towns. I'm in favor of that. I think we should not proceed too quickly, to be fair to all members. And I believe it should be put on the agenda for the next committee meeting.
Did you have your hand up, Kathy?
I was just gonna say the same thing. It wasn't near my memory banks, any of this, and I would prefer that it was on the next month's agenda, so we had time to review it than to just catch it by the seat. I mean, Roger read it, but it didn't really register. I'd rather have it next month.
And you have to
Next
remember
meeting.
that there's gonna be budget amendments, are gonna, if, with Marcelli, there's eventually gonna be
Right.
some kind of budget amendments, things to go along with. Marcelli is just the state thing saying, yes, we're in.
Right.
It doesn't actually make things happen.
Just got caught off guard having it today. I'd rather have it next week.
Right, do you have your hand?
Yeah, so the only thing I want to remind
Have a
you,
discussion.
and I don't mind the procedure, putting it in and all that done. But remember, this isn't just about Fort Edward. We're either open for business or we're not. But Fort Edward's where we've lost the most assessment. Fort Edward and Whitehall are the two that really, we could rebuild assessment to do the greater good for our county tax rate and our town, which eventually affects what our towns pay, the percentage of the county rate. This is gonna be a huge item for the county as a whole. This isn't just about Fort Edward by any means. This is far bigger. I know people don't like to look bigger here. This is far bigger than that.
John?
Catch back there, right? I got the Marcelli grant. There's gonna be matching money, some portion, that was taken care of by the IDA.
Yep,
So bottom line is, it doesn't cost the county nothing.
other than some administration. Yeah.
Right.
We're getting bigger than
Now he's gonna get the bridge.
By the bridge.
By the bridge.
They want that bridge.
Yeah.
That was a benefit to the county.
Dan, were there any, back to the resolution, were there any Washington County members of the IDA that acted in a way against the resolution?
There were 2.
There were 2. So if I remember the spirit of our resolution was the only control that Washington County has over the IDA is the appointment of its members. Correct.
Correct.
Who were the two members that acted against the wishes of the Washington County Board of Supervisors? Because I think that's then, because you even said, that's where let the chips fall. So do we just forget that? Or do we take action against those two members that did not react the way we wanted to at their next appointed time period? Who were those two members?
Mary King and Jimmy Sullivan.
Mary King and Ginny Sullivan?
Correct.
And they were present and they voted. So actually you had 7 votes. No,
And so we're,
Against.
because you didn't do anything.
well, it's actually, we only had 3 votes for. That's the actual statement, it's not the other way around.
When are their appointments up? January 1?
Yeah, they're appointed by the board that, so January.
I would recommend that they do not reapply for appointment.
Right.
I guess I rather think we do some of them are just optics. But I think if you remove the only 2 women members of the IDA, we're gonna look pretty foolish.
That's a sexist comment.
What's that?
That's a very sexist remark.
No, it's very sexist if you try to remove them.
No.
Would not have even given it a thought.
I don't think Dana said,
I wouldn't even thought twice.
I don't think Supervisor Hess said remove them. I think Supervisor Hess said they should reconsider their future applications.
Actually, yeah. Okay, so we're putting this on the agenda for next month, right? Our next
I'm
meeting.
still way ahead of you.
I don't want you to, change my title as long as.
We will have it on the next agenda. We will hopefully have, anybody that has requests for information on this, please let them know so that we can have all the questions ready to be answered at the next meeting.
I also think instead of just focusing on Fort Edward, we should also look at the town that the bridge is located in, which is not Fort Edward.
Just sitting on this side of the committee outside. I hate to use the word extortion, but you're saying, if you guys don't do this, we're gonna screw you on this. Something's not related at all. Because they won't put into a policy something about return on investment, we're not gonna help them be the lead agency in our March of Selly to get a bridge built to benefit Fort Edward. I just don't see the connection here of why we're trying to manipulate a board that you have no control over, and you're holding Tim hostage. Just a perspective I just wanted to throw out there. I just don't see the relationship. If we get a chance to help these guys, help these guys.
I don't have a problem with that. I just want to look at it. Just
We've
wanna
been
wait.
looking at it since February.
So everybody is set that this will be next, well, it won't be next month, it'll be the end of the
End
month.
of this month. It's only a couple of days.
Anything else? Dan?
I didn't want to bring it up earlier because I didn't want to mix it up with the bridge, but Roger, that resolution you read that was passed by the board, what does that mean to Washington County? I mean, if we pass a resolution stating something and that it doesn't occur, I was just wondering, was that all for nothing?
It's up to you to decide now.
So in other words, you're saying that, do we want to take action on that resolution?
Failure to heed it would be a better.
Okay.
And
I'm just curious
I think
what
this-
that all
I
meant.
think Mr. Half
He's been-
proposed the course of action.
Mr. Half will not be here in
Suggest-
January.
Suggest-
Okay, thank you.
That means you'll be eligible to be appointed to the IDA.
That's
You won't
right.
be sitting in the gallery, Dan?
There we go.
Just one clarification.
Maybe I'll be a Warren County then.
On the return on investment. On the return on investment, we're mandated by law to do a cost benefit analysis, which is in effect a more extensive return on investment calculation.
I think the new UTEP was an improvement, but I think you only went 50% of the way you could have gone. In fact, you have full-time employee requirements under solar. You should have it under any company, any, not just solar. You have to come to the town for approval on solar. It should be anything, not just solar. Those are good, but I would like to have seen the other things get a little infected by the contagion of full-time employment, town approval. I would recommend it, any town that's not on the appendix N, pass a resolution in your town and request that the IDA put you on now what they call appendix A. If you're on appendix A,
There is no appendix. You said that.
it used to be N,
So,
it used to be N, now it's called appendix A. I would recommend any town not on appendix A, whatever you want to call it, to get on it. If you're on it, then everything that we wanted will be done. They have to come to your town for anything they do, not just solar, anything.
One last comment, Brian and John.
Yeah, so at the IDA, the big thing was to get to the towns quicker, to talk to them when these things unfold. That's been the whole idea. That's where we're trying to get, is so the towns are involved, because you don't want to waste companies' time trying to put them in the town doesn't want. That's what you don't want to do. You want to find a place where they fit. Otherwise, they have to go somewhere else, whether it be Warren or Washington or a whole different entity. But that was the whole idea of rewriting the UTEP, was to get them involved earlier to find out whether they wanted to be in town or not. If they don't, we'll try to find a different situation that fits the company, and if it doesn't fit, they'll go somewhere else. That's the whole mindset of it.
Good luck with that. Because there's no requirement to do that. It's just a feel-good thing, get input, and then you, look what happened in Queens. What did you do in Queensbury?
Guys, you come up with a real voter. Well, like Matt-
All set? Thank you. Oh, Dick.
Well, like Matt said, this bridge is a whole, this is its own, we need this bridge replaced to develop.
What? We were told for a long time we didn't. Now we have to replace it.
As they say on some of the TV series, to be continued.
I remember Matt saying, don't come back to town.
This is a lot of help. Paper stuff low down.
Everybody at the table has an agenda for me?
That's way more than that, otherwise they do it themselves.
All right, let's go order the public safety meeting. Month of May.
It's always when it goes the other.
So with that, let's call the order. Thank you. Motion to accept the minutes for our March 28th meeting, please. Thank you, Dan. And a second. Yep. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. On to department reports. Sheriff Murphy, sir, you are first up. And for the committee, while the sheriff comes up, we do have a presentation that's about 20 minutes at the end of this agenda. It's called the future of EMS. Oh, okay. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. First item I have is to recognize a 2023 Marine Patrol grant. Basically, that's the grant we use for the boat patrol. It's 75% reimbursable. It's $36,000 grant. It's an annual grant. They pay for salaries for deputies to use the boat to patrol the canal system.
Motion by Dana, or Hogan, I'm sorry. Do I have a second? Any other discussion?
Sheriff, how often is the boat in the water?
I would say last year we probably used it 4 or 5 times.
It's kept on a trailer somewhere in your lot, probably down by the jail.
Yep.
Just a John boat?
No,
It's
it's 18-foot Austin whaler, I think. I've never been on it, but
There's somebody assigned to maintain this?
there is.
The motion was moved, recognized, moved to finance. Have a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Second item is Governor's Traffic Safety Committee grant. That's another award that is annual. Its totals $11,024. It used to be called Buckle Up New York. We use it to pay overtime for enforcement of traffic related offenses.
Motion to move to finance. Jim, second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Dave did.
I did it.
You did.
You can tell me, Jim.
You know, we'll work on that. Please.
Shine that Kruger image.
Good luck with that.
Sorry, Dave. It's been a long week already.
Third thing is Granville School District, which is to join the Special Patrol Officer Services Program. So we have an agreement that we need to have signed with the Granville School District. It's the same as all the other SPO contracts that we have, hours and all that stuff. I was just looking to see if the pay was in here. Yes, it is. $33.06 per hour.
Motion. Second by Dana. So Matt and Dana. Any other discussion? Sir.
Deb, where do you need the resolution for pay to go? Does that go to finance or person?
It should go to finance. Is this to start like in August with the rest of them?
Yes.
Okay, so it could be part of that, because we do the rates in the resolution, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
If not, we can wait till do them all together.
Okay, that's why I wanted to ask that.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
The final thing is the Traffic Safety Committee, Traffic Safety Board. We'd like to get that up and running again. It was one of the casualties of COVID. Really haven't done much with that board since then. So since there's been such a lull, it requires that the county assist with setting up the board. There's certain members for the bylaw that have to be on the board. Department of Public Works Superintendent, County Fire Coordinator, myself, the County DWI Coordinator, who's Under Sheriff, and the County Safety Officer, and County Director of Emergency Services, and one judge
And then the Board of Supervisors appoints 2 people. And then there are 9 people from within the county population who have an interest in traffic safety. So we'd like to get permission to reinstate the board as stated in the bylaws. And it would require that the chairman, I believe, appoints 2 people.
The appointees, those 9.
Yeah, when we get the names, yes. Yeah, I didn't know. We have to do this first. Because we do have a judge that's willing to do it. 1 person from the county. And the other people are ex officio members, so they're just.
I believe the chairman has his 2 appointees.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, perfect.
But we need the 9.
Okay.
Do we know who the 9?
No,
Not yet.
Are they compensated?
no.
Still a question, but what does the traffic safety board do? Can anybody tell me here? Are they bring the sheriff? Okay.
It's,
I'm not the only one.
it's supposed to review dangerous situations and work towards minimizing traffic accidents and deaths in the county. They also review if there's a request from the towns to change speed limits.
If there's a fatality and there's all set up with all the measurements and everything else on it, is that safety board?
Well, they review to see if there was maybe a need to put in a stop sign, if there was a need for a stoplight, if they wanted to.
I thought state DOT did that
Well, they do some of it.
with input from this traffic safety board.
Yeah, and we had some trouble here the past couple of years trying to change some speed limits because we didn't have a traffic safety board operating. So it was longer.
So the vehicle and traffic law says the board is authorized to promote and encourage street and highway traffic safety, formulate countywide highway safety programs, and coordinate efforts of interested parties and agencies engaged in traffic safety education. Cooperate with local officials within the county in the formulation and execution of traffic safety programs and activities. To study traffic conditions on streets and highways within the county, study and analyze reports of accidents and causes thereof, and recommend to the appropriate legislative bodies, departments, or commissions changes in rules or regulations in existing law as the board may deem advisable. Conduct meetings within the county whenever the board deems advisable, obtain and assemble motor vehicle accident data, and coordinate and direct local activities related to the implementation of the state highway program as approved by the governor. That is what the county traffic safety board does.
That's what I was listening.
And Washington County for the past 4 or 5 years has been in the top 10 of fatalities in counties with fatalities in counties have been in the top 10 for the past 5 or 6 years. So it's probably time we spend a little time actually taking that seriously.
Do we need to introduce the 2 names
Me and Daryl,
for the
unless
committees?
somebody objects or somebody really wants it besides me.
Said your name, you're done.
Well, I couldn't get anybody else to agree. Basically why I did it.
Do we need to, we don't need to.
But
move
what
on
the,
now.
I think what you're really lacking now is the 9 citizens. So
Yeah.
if people have suggestions, Chair would probably be very happy to get them.
Well, I didn't know at first we had to kind of reinstate the board, and then we have feelers out there. And I think we have 2 people that pretty sure are that want to be on the board. So I could come back with the rest, you know.
Well, just as a point of order, it'd be nice to get this moving along. If he had the names by, could you suggest do a resolution, have the names added on, so they'd be there when we saw them on the board meeting.
My question is, do they have to be, do the 9 people have to be approved by the committee?
I think the whole thing's gonna be approved by the board. Roger can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the way it worked in the past.
So
Yeah, it's a local law.
The ex officio people, probably the justice and those 9 members, you appoint 2 by letter.
Right.
typically.
Yeah.
The rest of them are automatically on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I thought, because in the past, the 9 people changed regularly throughout the year. And we didn't come back to committee to add or remove people. But unless they were, you know, one of the ex officio members or the judge, for instance.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Roger. I don't think we need committee approval. Thank you, Sheriff, for bringing this forward and trying to reinstitute an already established, approved organization that simply ceased to function properly due to circumstances beyond anyone's control. And so, unless the committee has anything else they want to talk about, then we can move forward with reactivating. I'll use that word, reactivating the committee or the board, sorry.
So the board already exists. You don't have to, it's there. It
Yeah.
just has been inactive. So the way you reactivate is you appoint members to it. So and the ex officio members are by virtue of their office appointed, so you don't have to appoint them. You've already decided who those ex officio members are. So anybody who's not an ex officio member needs to be appointed by name. And once they have the sufficient number of people on board, then they can go ahead and start doing things.
What do we read in the resolution to appoint those 9 or those?
That's my question. But I have the judge, and we know the 2 from the chairman of the board. And like I said, the 9, historically, the 9 have been people, they're on it, they're off it, they're on it, you know, so I haven't gone to many in the past that do that.
So you have in the past appointed those people by name.
The 9?
Yes.
Okay.
In order to not wait another month, is there a way that we can do something now? Send the names out prior to the board meeting on the 19th. You know, put them on the 19th, so we haven't got to waste the cycle.
The chairman can always, or one of you individually can always propose that resolution as long as it gets mailed ahead of time and you see it. It will be in front of you.
Matt, I like that concept. If anyone can find the 9 members, if we can find 9 members to participate, then we can put a resolution out for supervisors.
It would just be under one individual.
Your senior packet.
Unless anybody in the committee wants to do it differently.
If we have any vacancies, we just draw out of a hat by the supervisor's name, just add them in as.
I could. Yeah.
Just clarification in my mind, if this is a board, does it meet on a regular basis, like once a month, or does it meet when there is a request from someone saying that they want something reviewed?
So fourth Monday of every month is the scheduled meeting.
Okay, so it is scheduled once a month.
But in the past, we've done like every other month or whatever, because there hasn't been, I mean, we've worked closely with public health, putting, car seat things together and things like that. And like the chairman said, different things would come up in different towns and we would discuss them and kind of be a liaison to DOT and work to get speed signs up in those areas and things like that, crosswalks, different situations like that.
Thank you.
Any else, sir?
I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So this was bike weekend. I've had the question a bazillion times because there was people sitting down on the road class. Do you guys get reimbursed for backfill for the money that's spent for the sheriffs?
Yes.
Do you know how much?
I'm sorry.
Do they reimburse you just for the hours you send them, or do they give you a flat fee? I just had the question a bazillion times. So
It's the same as the fair. We give them how many people we have at their hourly rates and they pay us. Any for profit. We started doing that a while back.
And that bill has gone up.
No, it's a hot topic down in my area, so.
Yeah, but no, we definitely get reimbursed for that.
I thought we did, but this way I can confidently say we are.
Anything else from the sheriff? Thank you, sir. You're very good about that. Next up, you Pearl. Is this your last opportunity in the hot seat?
It is, so go easy, all right? Go easy, nothing too controversial. So, I just want to update everyone on the community service projects for 2023 that we've committed to. Painting, as soon as it dries out a little bit, we'll be up to the Warren Washington County Care Center, doing some painting up there. White Creek Town Building, we painted that probably 15 years ago, the exterior, we're gonna do that again. And then our largest project in the painting end will be the Hartford Civil War Listen Building, that project, so we'll be over there probably the end of June, July. We're gonna continue to maintain Hudson Falls and Mary Martindale Parks, and the Leap Community Garden was added this year, as well as the Fording and Tripoli Cemetery, the Argyle, Poor Man's, and then as referrals are made, are sent to us from the courts, we'll be finding spots in the communities to help, fill in those gaps. I know Salem called, they're having a problem with part of the old Revolutionary Cemetery over there, so we'll probably get a crew over there to help out on that, and possibly get someone through the courts to maintain that for the rest of the year. Last week, we met with Chief Kibling, Hudson Falls, to talk about developing a community response to vandalism going on in the park. They just refurbished Derby Park, and there's a small group of kids, not a large group, that are causing some problems. So the more serious cases of vandalism that are going to be sent to probation. We're talking about doing a diversion program with the police department, with a community emphasis, and really developing a community response to how they're going to handle the youth that are getting in trouble. Maybe restorative service involving their parents, getting their parents in, just letting your child go out there and do whatever without any supervision, and different restorative things where they'll do community restoration, those kind of things, letters of apology, all things on the table. It was nice meeting with the chief. It was the first time since he's been chief. I'm sorry to say that now, but his enthusiasm and the staff is incredible. So Sue will be working with them. And it's nice for me to go to one meeting and I'm gone. Sure, we can do that. There's a lot of that going on, but anyway, we'll be fine. The last thing, May 30th is my last day here. So I'm going to thank everybody, my colleagues, county administration. Everybody's been a great run. Appreciate it.
You can't leave until we're convinced you have a good transition plan. Is this the case?
It'll be Mike Who within 2 weeks, guaranteed. So no, we're in good shape. So I think you're in real good shape. And again, that's your decision, what you do. So, hi.
Dave?
Carol, I was up in Warren County the other day. It was compliments on how well you were instituting the program, and merging the programs together. So they appreciate what you're doing and the direction you're taking.
All right, thanks, Dave.
Thank you. Really appreciate
Thank
your hard
you.
work and service over the years.
Thanks, everybody. All right. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, code enforcement's got some airtime here.
He just skipped out.
Did he really?
He'll be back.
Well, public safety actually has a 20-minute briefing, yes.
I have a couple of quick things first, if I can do those.
Please.
We have a nomination for appointment to the Fire Advisory Board, which will be Tom Cassidy from the Shushan Volunteer Fire Company. We need to get that approved and move it forward for the board meeting.
Thank you, Dan. Do we have a second? Dave? Matt? I'm working on it. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
And we have one for the EMS Advisory Board, which will be John Smith from the Fort Everett Rescue Squad.
Motion. Seconded by Dana. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Brief update on the fire advisory board for anybody asking. They did have their first meeting a couple weeks ago, and they did elect their chairman and vice chairman. So they're back operational at a number of 9 as of right now, but 10 after the next board meeting. So I assume they'll continue to add members up to their 21 allotted as we continue to move forward and people re-engage. My other item was coroner related, just some updates relative to the coroner software program, which did go into effect. We did the initial training on it a couple of weeks ago with Terry and 3 of the 4 coroners. Coroner Garrett got called out on an incident, so he was unable to join us that day. But it is, the training is going well. So we're trying to, one of the coroners is using it very frequently. The other 2 are starting to learn the system, and we figure the same will be for Coroner Garrett as we move forward. But there was some discussion with Terry relative to the remaining grant funds of what we would do with that. Some of the coroners identified needs for connectivity pieces for upgrades in technology. So in discussions with Terry, I believe there was enough money left in that grant to provide them each with an updated laptop. So they're using a county-owned device for their work and not personally owned devices. And connectivity pieces with the ability to photograph if they need to at a scene. So rather than buy a camera and a MiFi, the discussion with Terry was we should get them a smartphone so they can do all of those county functions on their device and not be giving out their personal phone number to conduct county business and those kind of things. So the laptops, I think Terry will bring in front of IT, but the money or the majority of the money is in the grant for the laptops. We'll have to work with Al to change some things around since it's changed a few times since how we were originally going to do it, but that was a function in the grant itself. We'll just need to move that money around. The cell phones, however, that money will be eaten up by the laptops and the technology upgrades. So if we want to move forward with the cell phones, we'll need to figure that out in the budget. So right now they have money left in other parts of their budget, but as we know with the coroner's budget in years past, there won't be any money left at the end of the year since autopsies keep going up.
And remember too, we had budgeted for the program that the grant's not gonna pay for, so that.
Correct. Right, that should be probably still the majority of everything we got. So if we estimate about $200 a month for the 4 cell phones, and it may be a little less than that based on usage, but since they'll be using that as their main connectivity piece, we certainly didn't want to undershoot that. That would give us 6 months if we started in June and move forward, that we would have to come up with somewhere in the budget.
Any questions? Yes, Dan.
So when you mentioned the fire advisory board, they elect the chairman, vice chairman, you didn't say their names. Could you tell us who they are?
Sure. The chairman elected was Craig Hansen from Easton, and the vice chairman was Dave Getty from Hebron.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the coroners and the proposed road ahead for them? You want to tee up the presentation? While you're doing that, we can go to the.
Sure. Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sir.
Are you ready to have a discussion yet about the fire training center, or are we up until next time?
We're waiting until next time. They had just renegotiated the committee over there to get that going, to have a discussion of what the future looks like.
Not that I'm anxious,
from both counties.
not that I'm anxious to close the project, but.
Yes.
just to close the project.
Yes.
Okay.
For the cell phone.
You gotta wait till
You gotta create a new budget line, right?
Budget. You're gonna need money.
Right, money does not exist in their budget, other than in other lines that we can move from now, but we'll need to put back later.
About $2,400.
1,200, since it's just gonna be June till the end of the year.
Which I think we have in that line where we budgeted to the software.
I think, which we can use county funding for that, I guess, because in the grant, that ends in July, so we'll be, if we can use that money to put back into that, then yes.
You may see something in finance.
I don't see it in the budget where you can get the money without creating a new line and taking a contingent and putting it there.
The coroners have some money in their budget that they were gonna buy the software with. We were successful in applying for the grant, so that money is freed up now.
We actually put that in IT's budget.
Yeah, because that's not in the medical cabinet budget.
The software part.
Yes.
So you may see it move between departments, but the money, there is money that was unused.
So we'll discuss that in finance then.
Possibly.
Okay. Sounds like we got a little bit of work to do to figure that out.
There will be some of the other transfers from the 0.4 back to the 2 to paper. So.
Was that next week? Next week. We'll be able to sort that out by next week.
Yes.
All right.
Go back to code and.
Yeah, I'll let John go while you're cleaning up the briefing, I guess. John, come on up, code enforcement. You have a couple things you need to take care of, yes? Yes. Floor is yours. All right. Thank you. For those of you that like numbers and tables and charts and stuff, get these out. But I'll get started on the sewer project in Salem. I got an email from Peter Martin. He's a senior project engineer at Delaware Engineering that's trying to figure out how all of that's gonna work over in Salem. And he wanted to know if I would write a letter of support for the project. Specifically, he said identifying issues with current septic systems, groundwater wells, illicit stream discharges, etc. Why we think it would be a good idea for that sewer system to be installed over there. I reached out to a couple different folks to see if that was okay for me to do. And recommended that bring it for the committee or something like that. So.
Anyway, you're gonna write a letter supporting putting septic system, a sewer system in Salem.
Yes.
And you just want us to say that we don't have a problem with that.
You know, traditionally, departments don't set state policies of the county. They don't speak for the county, the board speaks for the county. We provide facts and figures, so if somebody said to John, I'd like to know how many failing, septic systems or how many, that's information, but supporting something is a policy of the government, and department heads traditionally don't state the policy of the government states. I think John's just making sure that that's something that the county isn't. I can't say why they wouldn't be, but the first one's always easy. So he's here to just make sure that everybody's on board with that position. I was one of those people he talked to.
Right. Is the Sue is on board with this? Supervisor Clay? Yes. Has anyone talked to her? I know she's not here today to represent.
So I'm not on committee, but I'll be the first one to step in. Wow.
Oh, no, we're not at that part. We're not there yet.
No wonder we don't get what
You want to tell us why it's such a good idea, because there's been a lot of failures, they're too close to one another, there's leakage, just give us a little background.
There have been systems that need to be repaired or updated or whatever, and they can't meet the setbacks that the state requires, so they have to get waivers. They're too close to neighboring wells, or home wells, through creek that runs through there. It's very tight spots that sewer installation would greatly help.
Isn't it on an aquifer?
It's on an aquifer.
I was gonna say, that's the biggest problem.
Is it mainly, it'll create a sewer district then?
I believe so.
And is it primarily the village area, or the a small part of the village, or outside where the village used to be?
The way it was described to me, it was the hamlet.
Because what I know is that the school is going to be one of the major supporters of this. Built in that corridor.
But this would be wholly a Salem entity, not a Washington County sewer district number 3 either.
I was hoping Sue would be here. I don't have any of the details. Besides, they want a letter from
So
me.
you're just in the infancy of this, because I read recently in Village of Cambridge that a lot of people came out to the meeting and they were freaked out at the cost, and they said, cancel the whole idea.
Completely different situation.
Yeah.
Right.
So Cambridge, and it's just to speak to some of that, in Cambridge, the village, some of the anchors like the school and some of the businesses that need to have wastewater or have some sort of treatment have adequate septic systems in place. So the impact was going to be on the villagers to pick up the cost of the $27 million project.
We have no idea of any of those details yet, but do we really need to know?
No, this is a Salem issue.
It's a Salem issue. So the only commitment from the county, the only effort so far would be to draft a letter saying generally it might be a good idea, because you don't really even know yet. It's down to cost in the end.
So I guess drafting a letter stating that there's a need to address, there are problems that need to be addressed in Salem. Would not be taking a position on whether or not this particular solution is a good idea, but yes, there are problems, and yes, they need to be addressed.
James?
You know how many houses? I mean, that's I think a generalized letter, again, Sue's not here, but I don't know if she's looking for a generalized letter or if there's more specific in regards to how many homes are impacted from the setbacks and the inability to qualify for future state regulation.
Our office wasn't asked for any numbers specifically. This is basically just a letter saying.
So it could be,
sewer
it could be
is better than
two
what's
houses
there.
impacted. Yeah, that's my point. You could be writing a letter stating ambiguously that two houses are impacted when, but that your letter could be ambiguously skewed to say half the village is impacted. That's my point, so.
And it would be a village issue. If there was
Oh, I'm sorry.
no-
That's
No,
right.
but it would have been.
It would be the town's issue. So.
This is also that any commercial property that has a hard time getting rules is Department of Health to run a restaurant or anything because of the sewer challenges with the sewer down there. So it's not just houses, it's businesses. We can't afford to lose business down there.
So is the committee comfortable with John writing a letter that supports the concept of improving the septic systems?
Well said, I'll move that. What he said.
Sounds like David. Any other discussion? Yes,
I'd
Jim?
write that letter without some parameters. That's all I'm going to say. You're going to get a lot of pushback. Just experience it. If there's no parameters, I'm saying if you write a letter that's ambiguously written that doesn't give specifics to how many houses you're going to have.
Fine, it'd be a positive from a code enforcement standpoint that they have a sewer system as opposed to the existing. That's all we're doing. It's
It's going to be.
Is it good or bad?
It's going to be taken differently. It's going to be. Okay.
Sam?
Joe, who's the letter going to?
I would be going to Peter Martin at the senior project engineer there, saying support what they're looking at.
The engineer is trying to get letters of support to them. Push up the chain.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Question, what would be negative if you did not even write anything at all? Nothing, right? If you didn't write anything at all, nobody's gonna complain. If you write something, somebody's gonna complain.
Correct. Not just somebody, a bunch of people are going to.
Well, but if you don't write a letter at all, that doesn't slow anything down. It's still a town of Salem issue.
Yeah, it'd be a funding source to say, well, I wonder why Washington County wasn't supportive of this.
I don't think they would have a checkoff box of who is and who isn't.
I simply do.
It's grant money, but the problem. And Salem had their opportunities in years past and nobody addressed it. And then the village got disillusioned. It's still a problem. It's just now called the town of Salem, the village.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I don't think I'm opposed. I think time will prove that I will be right.
Thank you.
Is that a motion?
All right, so okay. As everybody knows, our office got new software. Thank you again for all of your help in getting that done. We're still going through some growing pains with it, but overall it's going well. We're able to run reports now where we can check different metrics.
the papers that I gave you. It was, again, for those of you that like looking at numbers. But I can give you the basic gist of it. All right, put together. All right, so the first page, building applications, just a sampling of what we can do. So if there's things that you folks would like to see in the future, you can let me know. This is our year-to-date applications. We can now break it down into 5, 10, and 20-year averages so that we can compare where we are with that. You'll see that there's, at the bottom, it says with Hudson Falls and Kingsbury, and then without it. Kingsbury and Hudson Falls accounted for 15% of our building permits and just over 11% of our septic permits. So I broke them out just so you can see what they are there. Overall, we are on the plus side for everything, especially with the septics. Those are on the plus side for each year and also year to date. So the first one shows year to date for the building. Next one shows years for the building, and then the next 2 pages are the same for the septic. Yes.
Just looking at the very first column, the 5-year average. Is it the 5-year average? And then you go to the previous year, there's a huge change. I don't think statistically that is possible. For example, the first one, 5-year average of building applications, 2023, 139. And then the year before is 537. How do you fit that into a 5-year average?
No, those are year to date. So it's 139 up to today. Well, actually up to the end of April. So that's the year to date. It's in that left-hand column in the gray box. 2003 year to date.
Okay, all right, so the column header is just.
Yeah, I didn't have
a
chance to braid up quite as much as I wanted to. So then the next page is the total applications for 2022. I can redo those headers if you want on there just to make it a little more clear. And take into account Kingsbury and Hudson Falls, there are big differences in the numbers. Some of them are positive, some of them are negatives, but we're doing well on it.
So the point is, we've got some software where if we have questions about numbers and what John's office is doing, we can let him know and he can shape a report for us. So if there's anything out there that you guys want. Yes.
Septic applications, how are you doing on having multiple people available, certified to do the septic applications?
It's still in the plans, but it's at the moment still just.
But any code enforcement officer, if they're a certified code enforcement officer, can't inspect septic.
Correct, with the training to inspect it.
No, without the training to inspect it. If you're a certified code enforcement officer, aren't you by default can inspect septic without the extra training?
You can, but the extra training is what shows us what we're supposed to be checking.
Okay, but the answer is yes, any code enforcement officer can.
Yes.
But now you only have one. And I assume you have a backlog of these inspections? No?
You know,
What's the training requirement that is septic training? What are we talking about?
We actually, it's not additional designated by the state because that's DOH, Department of Health, that oversees that kind of stuff. I am looking into stuff that Department of State that oversees us, separate from them. So I'm looking into stuff from DOH as far as their training. There was one that we were going to in October. Everybody was going to go to it and then they canceled it at the last moment. So I've reached out to another company that does the training for septics that I'm going to have every.
Yeah, the state training. I thought it was like a day or two extra.
The state doesn't have any training as far as septics that we had offered, except for that one that they ended up canceling.
So any certified code enforcement officer can also do septic without the special training.
What's the special training time frame? That's what I'm trying to ask.
Right. It's not available at the moment, so that's what I'm trying to look into to find.
When it was available, how much time did it take? What was the training required?
A day. I would say a couple days would be my guess. Yes. I can't give you a solid answer because it's not available right now to give you the specifics.
We have a county that's 80 miles long. I think just to have one person allocated to it, when it could be all your people. Plus, I know there are septic, I have heard that there are issues with septic inspection, and you have just the one guy doing it. I think any code enforcement guy should be put into the schedule of inspecting septic.
Any other questions for John? Thank you, John. So back to public safety. Let's see what we got here. We got up is the future of EMS update. Tim went downstairs, didn't he? Is that what he did? Oh, are they?
Yeah, they're all standing in the hallway.
All right, here they come. Come on in. Have a seat, sir. Good. Yeah.
I would.
Jim would take ownership of this.
In this case, early, not even knowing about to put on foot with bear trap. Address bears, and then you go to bear trap. Yeah, that can go. It's the start, then add to the web.
Are you fixing?
I saw how it went down.
Okay.
2 months ago. I see the writing on the wall.
But you need 1 o'clock.
Revise your budget.
Did you get one?
Yeah, please have a seat. There's too many chairs available in the room. So with that. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. So, good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity from the EMS services and especially transporting ambulance services in Washington County, for the opportunity to come and address the public safety committee today. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Mark Spezio. I'm the Chief of Operations of the Cambridge Valley Rescue Squad. I'm also formerly the EMS coordinator in Washington County. And I currently sit on the governor's New York State Rural EMS Task Force to kind of address very similar things that are happening here on a statewide basis. And so I've kind of been asked through the work group to do this presentation, which is kind of part one of hopefully several parts, to bring everybody up to speed on what some of the current trials and tribulations and challenges are of the EMS system in the county. So hopefully we can ward off some of the potential negative impacts it could have with ambulance closures, system changes, as we've seen throughout the state. I do have some colleagues with me today. Campbell's the captain of Salem Rescue, Vinnie Smith, the president of Salem Rescue Squad, some folks from Cambridge, Anita Kowalski, Christina Goretto, and our group are represented from here.
Also, immediately after this meeting, we have put together a very informative show and tell, if you will, at the Fort Edward Rescue Squad station, which does include some pretty decent refreshments. So if you're hungry after a long morning and you want to wander over there, what we've done is each EMS agency has set up a table to present individual agency-related challenges and needs, along with just some price point items, just to give you an idea of what it costs to fly an ambulance, some of our operational requirements and those kinds of things. So please, if you're available, even for a few minutes, stop over and check out your agency's table, grab a quick bite. We'd really like to see you. So I'm going to try to keep this short. I know you folks have had a long morning of meetings, and we can kind of move on. So again, thank you. I know kind of bounce to the next slide there. Again, just a big thank you on behalf of the EMS agencies in the county for, first of all, the forethought to create this work group to start with. I know the Bureau, Director Gosnell and Deputy Director Hardy put a lot of time and effort in the top end of this to do a pretty important survey to kind of give you an idea of where we are, and with the leadership coordinator Mason to bring the EMS agencies to the table to work with the Board of Supervisors and county officials to kind of plan out the future and let you know where we are. So, so who are we? We are actually 8 independent, non-for-profit 501c3 organizations that were started between the late 1950s and the early 1970s in the county to address the need of ambulance transportation. Certainly prior to that, there was either nothing or the local funeral director would pick you up, and if you're doing well, you either turned into Emma Lang Stevens or Mary McClellan. If things weren't going so well, you went back to the parlor. And that's how that system went until EMS really was adopted. This is the least common type of EMS service in the state of this independent, non-for-profit type organization. Municipal services, fire-based services, hospital-based services, and for-profit commercial organizations are much more prevalent and serve higher population. This type of service tends to serve in the rural areas and the wider geographic areas of the state. All of the 8 ambulance services are credentialed at paramedic level care. That means each ambulance is equipped with paramedic level care. It doesn't mean that every ambulance and every response has a paramedic on it. And that's the challenges we'll talk about in a few minutes. Our coverage areas, we all have primary 911 or emergency response districts that are broken up within reasonable geography of our area. Those areas are all approved by the Department of Health in what we call an operating territory, which is approved through a certificate of need process. We have only one agency that has a county-wide operating authority. That happens to be our agency through the purchase of from other commercial agency years ago of their service. So there are no commercial ambulance services or other ambulance services that are permitted by the Department of Health to provide service in this county, with the exception of the 8 of us.
Not even the air ambulances?
Air ambulances, yes, they override that. They have statewide operating authorities. And these agencies initially, when they were built, and even through probably the early 2000s, maybe even to a decade and a half or so, were built to be self-sustaining, where, an occasional mutual aid call here or there, you could work together on big incidents or big drills, but there really wasn't a huge need to have overlapping services or collaborating services other than to get together socially and those kinds of things. One of the things in a lot of the leadership programs that I work on is this concept that non-for-profit is really, has to be, it's important to note, it's a tax status, not a business model. For a long time, not-for-profit organizations, especially EMS organizations, were built on the model, we'll make just enough money to keep things going, but we don't put money away for capital expenses. We don't look at what the future and strategic planning need to be. And that needs to change because of the flat reimbursement that we continue to have. So we can bounce to the next. Additionally, who we are, we truly at EMS have an identity crisis. We have for years. We're the newest part of the public safety. Now there's 4 branches of public safety. Emergency management been around longer. That may be the newest one that's kind of floated to everybody's radar. But certainly when it comes to the original 3 of police, fire, and EMS, EMS is the youngest of the group. And EMS, again, because of the way that we're set up, is a little bit, we don't have that big organization that, that parental organization type thing or fraternal type organization. You know, when there's a fire alarm, the fire siren goes off in your communities, or most of them do now if you have discontinued those. You know, we don't have big firematic parades. We don't have the ability like law enforcement does to publish newspaper articles when we go on a really bad incident because we're bound by privacy laws. So we're not out there as much. But in reality, you know, when you look at the volume of service that we're doing, you know, we are doing 10, 15, 20 times more alarms in our county than our fire service are. In some cases, we're doing almost equal to the number of 911 generated responses that law enforcement is doing, or relatively close to it. So we're busy. We're out there. We're doing a lot of things. You know, and sometimes we are so busy doing the thing, you know, the responses, the training, the putting it all together, that we don't have time to lobby, advocate, and grow what we're doing. And that's a problem that we're seeing statewide and nationally. EMS just has never had that big lobbying support behind it. There's also, in talking, we've taken the EMS agencies and worked together to help put this together and some other things together outside of the work group. And one of the feedback that's been coming from a fair number of the agencies is there was a little bit of apprehension speaking individually to local government, especially at the town level. Our agency, as an example, we go, you know, annually to our 3 towns. I'm glad to see all 3 of our town supervisors. Looks like he might have snuck out. He was here earlier. I spoke. Oh no, he's over there. And we every year faithfully we go and we do an annual report. I know a lot of the others try to do that, but there's sometimes it's a feeling like, you know, we go to do the annual report and so you're only coming to ask for money. We don't, you know, and so there's a little bit of that apprehension, and I think we need to, this is one way that we can improve that and realize that we're all working for the greater good, which is the health and safety of our community. So where is EMS today? EMS is really grown to be a patient-centric approach, and patient-centric means that everything needs to revolve around the patient. It's not what it says on the side of our ambulance, it's not what it says on, you know, who goes, who doesn't go. It's on what's in the best interest of our patients. How do we get the best care? Sometimes that doesn't mean that the ambulance needs to get there as soon as possible. Some patients can wait a little longer for the most appropriate care to come. Doesn't mean that every patient should go to the hospital either. Some patients can be treated right in place. Paramedic level care is the standard of care for mild, for mid to high acuity cases. That is a national standard. That's a state standard. That's, you know, that's why we train the way we do. That's what the protocols, that's what medical direction. Really, at the end of the day, that's what our patients kind of expect. Talked a little bit about the right response for the right situation. Again, not every patient needs a paramedic level ambulance. And again, not every patient needs actually an ambulance. Some just need an EMT to go and do an evaluation, help them up, and make sure they don't need to go to the hospital. Certainly, we have an expanded toolbox, both clinically and technologically. Our clinical abilities continue to grow exponentially. Even our basic level care, our EMTs, continue to have new tools added to their toolbox all the time. Paramedics, again, continue to change what they're able to do in the field. Technologically, we've seen a bunch of different changes as well. Dispatch technology, administrative tools, scheduling, inventory control, all of those things. And truly, we are transitioning from a 100% public safety entity into probably a 50-50 or maybe 25-50 public safety, public health role. Our role nationally has been defined as much more of a public health role than a public safety role. And certainly we need to have an integrated approach to doing this, both from a basic to advanced level care, but integrating with public health, which we did extremely successfully during COVID, to integrating with other public safety and other healthcare type organizations. EMS in the near future, and this is happening now, this is happening not only in other places nationally, this is happening in some places in the state, and this is happening in some places right here in the county. Treating patients in place and not taking them to the hospital is continuing to expand. I'm working actually on a program now where we'll be, through our community paramedicine programs and working with our collaborative partners with that, we'll actually be doing paramedic level visits at home for high acuity patients that are discharged from the hospital so that we can avoid them returning to the hospital and needing ED admissions. We're looking at far less ambulance transports in the future, payers finding ways to keep patients out of the hospital, and certainly other ways to integrate. So if we don't kind of change that model, and all of those models don't necessarily mean it's going to be less expensive to operate. All of those models means we're changing it, and which changes the way that we're reimbursed and how we're reimbursed to do what we do. So I put the little tumbleweed in there. Actually, as we're putting this together, somebody else came up with that idea. If EMS doesn't change and we don't continue, then we're going to be obsolete. And, you know, there's lots of places that have had huge gaps in EMS coverage. And if we don't do those things well, then we're not available for the heart attack, stroke, and trauma patients that need the emergent level service. You know, what happens if nothing changes? We think we're all on the same page with this, that one or more EMS agencies in this county could very likely close. That could happen in the calendar year 2023. It could happen in 2024, but certainly, and we've even looked at it within our own agency, if there's no significant changes, our life expectancy going as is probably 2 to 5 years, or we'll have to do something extremely strategic. And we're not quite sure there's options out there. So that is going to create significant gaps in healthcare. Replacement, either temporary or permanent, will not be able to afford to provide the level of service on billing revenue alone. And we've seen that. I did a little bit of consulting work with the town of Brunswick last year. They use a commercial service hub for a number of years to provide service to the town of Brunswick. And yes, the town of Brunswick has the Route 7 corridor just outside of Troy with Walmart, Price Chopper, and all of that. But once you get east of that, and I worked in Rensselaer County in Tim Hardy's same position down there for a number of years. Once you get outside of that Route 7 corridor, the town of Brunswick is pretty rural. They do about 1,100 ambulance calls annually there. For that commercial service to dedicate one paramedic ambulance 24 hours a day, and there are hospitals in the city of Troy, Samaritan. In addition to that ambulance service, billing, 100% billing, which they take people to collection, they direct bill Medicare patients that don't pay if they don't go to the hospital. In addition to that, their quote for that service was $800,000 a year, just for that. We've seen the Channel 13 news stories on the host with companies using an existing resource to provide their service. Again, it's a commercial for-profit resource that bills for service the same way that we all bill, but actually to a greater extent. They're going to be charging them for one ambulance $50,000 a month, which is $600,000 a year. So anybody you get, if it's not a county service that you're going to get to replace your missing service, if you go outside, those commercial services are going to want, first of all, they have to obtain an operating authority to do it. And then in addition to the billing for service, they're going to want a contract to be able to provide it, because there's a huge cost of readiness. And that's the part of this that is hard for a lot of folks to put their arms around. Certainly, we all understand the people using the service should be paying for it through their insurance. But at the same token, there's a huge cost of the preparedness to be able to provide that service when it's needed. You know, to some levels, we're our own worst problem. And this is one of the comments that came up at one of our state task force meetings just recently from a gentleman out in the western part of the state. Part of it is we keep showing up. Even though we'll show you in some of the documents or some of the data that is in your binder, that we have a fairly significant mutual aid or call turnover. And that's call turnover is when the responding agency, the responsible agency is unable to fulfill a crew, whether it's because they don't have anybody available or whether it's because all of the resources are out, the first ambulance is out. Ours is relatively okay. Overall, when you use all 8 services, it's a little under 10% for all calls. That's probably an okay thing. But when you break it down and you look at individual agencies and first call, second call, third call, some do very, very well, some not so well. Some do very well in their first ambulance out, some not so well. Then you're relying on your neighbors to come, and if those neighbors are out, who then do you get? But we keep those numbers low and we continue to show up to some level. Our primary challenge is certainly funding. Sustainable funding stream needs to be there to meet today's standards. You know, we're trying to make up 30 to 50 years of insufficient or no funding for EMS. In your packet, in this binder, in the second phase of it, there's some data sheets. I went and pulled some data from 3 rural towns in Rensselaer County, 3 relatively rural towns in Saratoga, or 5 rural towns in Saratoga County, and 3 rural towns in Warren County. Just went to their websites this year and pulled their town budget. Then Christina was gracious enough to pull the population for each one of those towns, and based on their EMS budget and population, the lowest per person EMS budget support was about $23.90 per person. When you look at Washington, the highest was actually the town of Johnsburg and Warren County, and that was $105 per person. When you look at Washington County and take all of the municipal funds that are allocated towards EMS, there's 2 villages that contribute, and then the towns that contribute, it comes to about $240,000. When we divide that out, it equates to about $3.70 per person. So certainly, there is the potential for room to grow there. It certainly has put our system overall behind. Clinically, not all agencies are able to put a paramedic in their truck with any level of routineness. There's agencies that do very well. They'll have 40 hours a week that are covered, and then they may not have a paramedic the rest of those hours. Some are having difficulty even filling an EMT. There's one agency, as we're sitting here today, had an overdose call in their village. Their first call of the day, their first ambulance. They were not able to field the crew. So a neighboring agency had to respond to that call on a Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock to handle that overdose call for them. Certainly workforce is an issue. Workforce is, money doesn't necessarily solve workforce issues, but just so you're aware, the workforce issue is the same as it is across healthcare affecting EMS. So we certainly are feeling that punch, or that pinch rather, not that punch, I guess it could be a punch. You'll find that, with rosters, that there are a number of people that are working or volunteering in a number of different agencies, even right within the county. Certainly, we are competing against agencies that have municipal EMS agencies because of things like state retirement, municipal benefits, healthcare, those kinds of things. And certainly, the wages. We are certainly on the low end of wages when it go across the continuum of EMS in this region. It certainly puts us behind in equipment. If you're able to go to Fort Edward, you'll see that. One of the greatest inventions, and certainly has added 15 years to my career, is the auto-load stretcher system, where you take the stretcher, it lifts and lowers itself, which we've had those for a while. But now this one, you lift it, push the button, it raises, you put it into a set of into a clamp, basically. You push a button, and the wheels come up, the clamp grabs onto it, and you can push that in there. 2 people can manage that stretcher very well. We still have ambulances that don't have that technology. And the back injuries, only having 2-person crews, in a lot of cases, we're looking at retirees that are fielding ambulance crews during the day, just don't have the physical stamina to do the lifting. Certainly equipment facilities. There are a couple of agencies that have some super nice facilities, but because of our growth, because of the amount of people that we're paying, number of people that are staying overnight in our stations, and the amount of equipment and run numbers we have, we're kind of expanding or kind of blowing out the seams of our stations. So these all contribute to service gaps, certainly. And the current model for funding EMS is based on reimbursement for some services. And I think that's an important thing to remember. If we do not take a patient to the hospital, which that number has risen substantially since 2019 and has really expanded since COVID. If we don't take the patient to the hospital, we do not get paid for that trip. So the only way we generate revenue is by transporting the patient to the hospital. We also can't say something, oh, you have a sore throat, we're not taking it to the hospital. If they want to go to the hospital, we take them to the hospital. Insurance companies are starting to look at those and say, you really didn't need an ambulance. You have a commercial ambulance or you have a commercial payer or insurance payer. We're not going to pay for that now. So, we can't pay for, while we can bill for an 80-year-old woman that falls at home, needs lifting assistance, isn't injured, but her 84-year-old husband can't pick her up. So we go, we lift, we make sure she's okay. We put her, help out with the little home things, put her back in chair, back in bed. We can bill for that, but that bill goes directly to that patient. The insurance carrier will not pay for it. So if we bill that at $100, does that patient then decide, do I pay for food, medicine, or my ambulance bill? Which I'm sure you folks have had that same debate when it comes to other things related to the elderly population. So, and the community expects availability. Reimbursement is based on, what we can get for services. It's not based on the availability of the services. I think the community overall expects availability. In order for our service to work in the county, we have to rely on volunteers. We cannot do it based with the volume we have and the distance we have to go to the hospitals. We cannot do this alone based solely on paid staff. We would all be out of business tomorrow. We have to rely on volunteers. Volunteerism in EMS has been on a steady decline for 25 years nationally. We have held that. You know, like a lot of things that happen nationally, it takes a while to get to Washington County. That we've held on to that for a long time. Even before COVID, we started to see the trend. But even the volunteers we have now, when I joined in 1989, this was on my hip all the time. And if I wasn't doing something, I was out the door to go on an ambulance call. Ambulance calls now take 3 times longer than they took in 1989 between charting, restocking, distances to the hospital. We don't take patients just to the closest hospital anymore. We take them to the closest appropriate hospital anymore. If they're a really bad trauma patient and on the southern end of the county, they're going to Albany Med. They're not going to Saratoga and drop and run. So that call that could take an hour and a half is now taking 3 hours. So volunteers just are not volunteering to the level that they're doing, and the numbers are down. So the next one is going to be service gaps. So certainly call turnover is a concern, and it's going to be a growing concern. And anytime we start to see agencies experience difficulty, and this is seen statewide, it's seen nationally, we have these, it's the one just prior. We do see call turnover. And we break it down by first call because I think expectation is every agency, their ability to get that first ambulance and that first crew out the door. After that, it's going to depend on a lot of other factors. So we look at it, we break it down to that second call, third call, fourth call, or the day that hold account, lots of things happen. Certainly mutual aid responses can create more coverage gaps. So if there's a mutual aid call in Argyle or a call in Argyle as an example, if they go out on their first call, but they get a second call, they're not able to field the crew. Fort Edward already is on 2 or 3 calls because their call volume is now over 3,500 a year. So Easton Greenwich comes to take that call. Now there may not be somebody to back up Easton Greenwich. So now in essence, you have no available ambulance for the towns of Hartford, Argyle, Easton, and Greenwich. So now that mutual aid is coming from Salem, Wilton, or if Fort Edward clears up to go there. So it's just the longer it goes and the volume continues to go up. I think to some level, there needs to be a discussion at some point, what is acceptable? What does the community want? What does the board want? What do you expect of the service to be able to provide? And that's, certainly setting standards is a huge thing. And that's something definitely being looked at the state task force. Certainly the 3 high volume agencies in the county, their first call turnover rate is less than, it was at 0.5%. And that's based on 2022 data. Or I'm sorry, that's based on data from 19, 20, and 22, or 21 and 22. We took out 20 because that was all skewed. The call volumes in 2020 with the onset of COVID really poured out. The 5 smaller medium to volume agencies, the first call turnover rate is 8.5%. So that's where those. So service gaps 2, limited paramedic level care. We do not have a good way to track this. The CAD system unfortunately doesn't track it. So this is kind of anecdotal evidence. You can listen, especially on the weekends or overnights. You can have an ambulance coming from Salem that is calling all the way to Glens Falls Hospital that may not get paramedic level care because they don't have it available at that time, and the agencies going to the hospital may not have it as well. Or coming from Skeensboro out of Whitehall is another example. If Fort Ann is out on a call, they may not have it available. Fort Edward's volume is so high, they don't want to take their paramedics out of Fort Edward Kingsbury to respond to those calls. And then out of county resources, again, are busy. So that patient may go from Whitehall, who's having a heart attack or severe difficulty breathing, and may not get paramedic level care going into the hospital. Certainly lengthy response times for link-ups. ALS is the standard in most areas. We're in a region that doesn't require the automatic dispatch of a paramedic unit to certain acuity calls. Most places around the state do. That, when a BLS truck is dispatched, a paramedic has to be responding to that. We just don't have the resources right now to be able to do that. So again, that continues to create gap issues as well. So where is healthcare in Washington County right now? The way we look at it from our lens, certainly, the Health and Human Services Committee looks at it as well to get a pulse on it. I will say that we continue to work very closely with the Public Health Department on those related things. EMS has really become 24-hour healthcare in the county and has for a number of years. We have no hospitals. It's 20 years ago last month that Mary McClellan closed. Doesn't seem to be that long for sure, but that was the last standing hospital. We have one urgent care, and that's in Cambridge. And that's open 10 hours Monday through Friday and 8 hours on the weekend. with very limited radiological services. It's not like going to urgent care at Multimed or one of the well-nows in Glens Falls or something like that. It's much different. The only pediatrician's office in the county closes next week, I believe, or I think maybe, the end of the week. Thankfully, they've opened the doors and they've donated a whole bunch of their stuff so that we can utilize that. So that's really nice. But the only pediatrician's office, which is next to the urgent care center in Cambridge, is closed. There's primary care in Cambridge, Fort Edward, Granville, Greenwich, Hudson Falls, Salem, and White Hall. The rest of the communities do not have primary care. And nursing homes. They have bigger workforce issues than we do. Home nursing. They have huge workforce issues. They are turning down referrals. Our community care medicine program is getting referral after referral because people are at home that really need nursing level care that they can't get for wound care management, catheter management, those kinds of things. We also knew that several years ago, there was going to be a nursing, 20 years ago, people were saying there was going to be a nursing home built on every corner because the baby boomer population was going to be so big and there wasn't going to be enough people to take care of those folks. That didn't happen. So lots and lots of these really acutely ill patients are living at home. So the need for services is quickly outpacing the available resources, including EMS. Patients are unable to see their primary care. I don't know if any of you, I'm sure you or a family member has experienced this before. I had a really good friend of mine who, long story, had shoulder surgery, got a pulmonary embolism from it, or needed to go see a cardiologist. The ER told him, or the hospital, when he got discharged in the county, you need to see a cardiologist within 3 weeks. His appointment was scheduled for 12 weeks later. So we see this all the time with patients that are being discharged from the hospital that can't get in to see their primary care. They just can't do it. People are much sicker at home. There's a lack of extended care beds. Even the 3 or the 4 nursing homes in our county are not taking patients the way that they were. Insurance companies don't pay for long visits, etc. There's a lower Medicaid threshold now, so more people are qualifying for Medicaid. Be quite frank with you, every time we roll an ambulance on a per call or cost per call basis, if we pick up a patient, even at the EMT level, and transport them to a regional hospital, Glens Falls, Saratoga, or like Bennington for us, we lose money by about 50%. It covers about 50% of what the cost per call is if it's a Medicaid patient. The payer mix for Medicaid in Washington County right now is right around 21 to 22% total for ambulance calls. The other thing to remember is, and this is a national statistic, that Medicaid patients, 80 to 90% of Medicaid patients will utilize EMS or the emergency room as their primary health care annually. So it increases the burden upon us. The other thing that we found, and we'll talk about the funding, I'm sorry, and transportation remains a big problem. If you pull, Tina McDougall's annual reports from public health, our every 5-year reports on public health, transportation is always the #1 biggest issue. And it's not necessarily ambulance transportation. It's getting people to their appointments so they can see their doctors, so they can stay healthy. So the other thing is we've educated people to call 911 when they need help. So they do. And if it's medical related, rightfully so, the 911 center sends an ambulance because we are the 24-hour healthcare. Now, again, do all these people need an ambulance? Probably not, but it's a service that we have to be able to provide. So what are some system stressors that we have right now? We're a non-government entity asking for government support to provide a critical community public safety, public health service. So that's a stressor because we are asking for something. We are not a municipal service. We are a not-for-profit private organizations. We have a lot of pride in what we do, and everybody's trying to maintain that. So it's difficult in some cases to open ourselves up to saying we need help. Call volumes have exploded. The data sheets in your binder will show that. They have continued to rise. Fort Edwards is astronomical. They've gone from about 2,500 calls a year 3 years ago to 3,700. But you can see it just with the population, just with the growth that the town, especially in the town of Kingsbury, has seen in the last couple of years. Not enough money to do the job. At the end of the day, the reimbursement model is not there. Flat reimbursement rates. I've said this before. A couple of years ago, we did a Zoom meeting where I did a presentation. The last time that Medicaid mileage reimbursement rate for Washington County was increased was 1988. I graduated from high school in 1988, and I certainly have enough grade to show that was a long time ago. So the payer mixes have changed. We have many more Medicaid HMO than we ever had. Here's the other thing is even though we're down to 10% commercial payers, many of those commercial payers we're finding, those people have high deductible plans. And the last one you're going to pay out of that deductible, if they're paying out of pocket for the deductible, is the ambulance. Because we're not knocking on the door. We're not affecting their credit. In some cases, some agencies are taking people to collection for those bills. A lot of people just still aren't paying those bills. Workforce, we talked about. That's a huge system stressor. It's hard to find people. It's hard to compete to keep people. Ambulance shortage. As an example, Eastern Greenwich had a catastrophic ambulance accident about a month ago. For them to replace that ambulance, which is total, it was their newest ambulance. For them to replace that ambulance, you're looking at probably 18 to 24 months. Right now, the only used ambulances to replace that date pre-2013 or 2014 with well over 200,000 miles because there's no market on them because of supply shortage issues. In addition, the cost of the ambulance, when Eastern Greenwich purchased that ambulance, is about $170,000. Their quote to replace that in kind today, and they bought that in 2019, to replace that in kind today is $247,000. And they have that documentation. And then generally the cost of everything. One medication that we're required to carry in the ambulance is called glucagon. We use it very infrequently. The prices, because of the way it's shipped, it used to be about $25 for a box of it. It is now $349 a box. And every ALS unit has to have at least one box of it on the truck. If we don't use it, we squirt it in the dirt, if you will. We take the medicine out and we put it in a bag of sand and we throw the sand away. So that's kind of where we are. So what are some other system stressors? Mental health of the EMS provider, that has become a really, really big issue. In the Capital District, there were 2 EMS suicides last year, young people in their 20s. And a lot of it is because of the work, the stress. Here's one of the things that I think sometimes is lost in the minutia is all of the high profile calls. And I know, there's been a few very high profile calls recently in this county. The people that are there that are either providing first aid or that are saying we can't do anything more are the EMS providers. As much as, our law enforcement in this county does an amazing job, absolutely amazing, and they should be applauded for all of their efforts as well. The EMS providers are the ones that are there. They're also the ones that are dealing with the families immediately thereafter. They're the ones, lack of a better way to put it, seeing the carnage of some of the things that are happening. So that's a huge one. In addition to it, our number of mental health related calls and incidents that we're responding to has exploded. Again, that's one of our biggest call volume increases. The number of psychiatric emergencies is huge. The risk of violence towards EMS providers is significant. We talk a lot about Narcan, right? And using naloxone and law enforcement having naloxone. And certainly we go to all of those calls as well. So law enforcement naloxone is free. Our boxes are $60 a box that we have to carry. And we have to carry it because we administer it differently. But even when we get there and we administer it, in a lot of cases, probably half or more, these patients are waking up. We can't get their name. They give us a good push, say, thank you, you just ruined my high, and they walk away from us. That's the end of it. We pack up our stuff, we put it back in the ambulance, and we go back. We can't bill. We don't even get demographics on the patients in a lot of those cases. There's also been, and some of these are justified, but there's a lot of them that are very questionable. Medication errors by a paramedic in the back of an ambulance. Nationally, there's places that are charging those paramedics criminally for those errors. Bad things that happen. So would you like to be a volunteer paramedic jumping in the back of the ambulance at 2 o'clock in the morning and somebody's throwing up on you and you grab the wrong medication and the patient had a bad outcome? Let's say they didn't even die. And then the next thing you know, you're being criminally charged. Certainly legal liability, right? That's why we have liability insurance. But being criminally charged for something like that. Certainly training. The public perception of what we should do and be able to do that continues to increase. That's a training need. And ER wait times have gone down a little bit. But if you went back from November through about March, even in places like Glens Falls Hospital, I took a patient who was having a heart attack at Glens Falls Hospital and put him in the waiting room with 30 other patients because there was no room in the end. If you went to Albany Med or St. Peter's during that time, you may sit there for 3 hours before they would accept the patient. So, that really increases time. And whether you're paying somebody or somebody's volunteering, that's a huge thing. right, we'll try to continue to go through as quick as I can. So what are some things out of our budget? You can see these. These are things that legitimately agencies in the last 2 years have pulled from their budget in order just to continue to keep the ambulance moving. Training being one of the big ones. We've pulled back on conferences, we've pulled back on out-of-town training, on leadership development, instructor development, those kinds of things, which is going to have devastating consequences on the longevity and sustainability of our agencies and our clinical abilities. We're falling very far behind on technological upgrades, which give us ability to chart, give us the ability to see where we're going, and on inventory control. Capital upgrades, cardiac monitors. All of the ones, almost every agency's cardiac monitors are probably going to need upgrading within the next 3 to 5 years at the tune of $45,000 to $50,000 a piece, because the vendors just are not going to service those particular machines anymore. Volunteer incentives are out. Lots of agencies used to do things like gym memberships as a retention. Meals at meetings. If we're having our monthly meetings at 6:30 on a weeknight, it's kind of nice to feed the gang that's coming in. People have pulled back on those kinds of things. Uniforms. We don't require our police officers to purchase their own uniforms. We don't expect firefighters to purchase their own turnout gear, but we seem like it's acceptable for EMS providers to throw on a t-shirt and your jeans to get blood thrown out, that kind of stuff. So we pulled back on that. Certainly things like marketing materials, which are very helpful with recruitment and retention, replacing equipment and those kinds of things. And what's next out of our budgets that will impact our ability to respond. How is EMS funded? We've talked a lot about this. It's the all you call, we haul in order to get paid type of thing. Certainly the rates do not equal the cost of doing service. The federal government is looking at it. Really, the rates are all governed by the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, which is part of the federal government. They set them for Medicare, and then the state set them for Medicaid, and then based on that, the commercial insurers will do that. Certainly fundraising is not effective, primarily because we just don't have the people to do it, and the man-hour per return on fundraising efforts is minimal. We used to do a huge chicken barbecue. We did it would be the first Monday in May. It would have been yesterday. And we used to do 750 chickens. If it wasn't for the fact that we had a member that had all the equipment and did them all around the southern part of the county that donated her time to do that, we wouldn't have made anything. We only made, a couple $1,000s. We went out to try to do the same thing, and to do that many chickens with probably about 40 or 50 hours worth of personnel time and preparation, we'd have made like $600 doing the same volume, hiring somebody. So it's one of those things. Really, right now, the only way to increase revenue is by increasing volume. And some agencies it's just difficult for them to do it. They don't have a hospital to do transports. And they just need to cover their own things. So, and we do a lot of service things that we just simply don't get paid for or can't do. So how do others fund EMS nationally, statewide, and other places? Either municipal agencies where it's the responsibility of the local government. The local government creates the ambulance service, hires the people, buys the equipment, and it becomes a county department like a village police department or your highway department, et cetera. Municipal agencies have contract with community-based organizations such as us. That's kind of the most popular model. That's the model that you will see in that one data sheet I talked about earlier. None of those agencies are municipally owned agencies. They're all agencies that are not-for-profit organizations that are contracted with local government to provide a level of service. And none of us expect to get a good chunk of money without performance standards or without some sort of input on things from local government. We're just not looking for money without being held to task and reporting properly. Certainly, we have lots of ground to make up. Equity. We are doing or expected to do the same job as everybody else. And this is an important one. And for those of you that don't know, I was on the village board in Cambridge, and I was mayor for a number of years down there, for almost a decade. And I was one of the primary pushers and contractors for the combined police agency in Cambridge and Greenwich, and negotiated several of those contracts with Greenwich. And funding doesn't always have to be cash. In-kind services can be a huge part, whether they're facility services or something as simple as, instead of the local EMS agency paying somebody to plow their station or having to hire somebody to cut the grass. If you have a village or town highway department that's out doing those things anyway, save them a couple $1,000s a year to do that, and in turn, provide that level of service could certainly be helpful. So the solution, we have some ideas, certainly. We wanted to educate. I think, the chairman of the committee, asked us to educate first. And then that's what we're doing today, is to hopefully lay out, certainly we are painting a picture today, and of where things are and where things are headed. We continue to do the job, and we continue to want to do the job. There's no lack of wanting to do what we do from the EMS agencies. The price tag is too high to fix this problem completely. If you were to, blow everything away and start a county-wide ambulance service and do it based upon, an accreditation model, you would it'd be a non-starter. You look at the number and go, that's really funny. And say, okay, what do we do in the meantime? Our solution looks at a parallel approach. It includes agency level, which kind of goes to the two objectives that were part of the original creation of this work group. The first one is to help each agency cover their first call and with some equipment and training cost relief. And then the second one is the creation of some sort of county-wide network, whether there's tons of models out there that this could be done to provide backup, advanced life support, and backup ambulance service to cover those gaps. Sorry I took so long, there's a lot of ground to cover. And don't forget to go to Fort Edward if you're available.
So again, back to the main purpose here was educate. There are a couple of different items on the table that are being discussed at various levels that could be possible solutions. We keep asking ourselves, are we in crisis? That's a matter of perspective. I can't answer that question, to be honest with you. But I do know that it's being worked at multiple levels. So we wanted to just really, the working group and all the effort that's been put into, and I want to congratulate all the EMS folks that worked on this and our team at helping, really was to bring some data to the table so that we could understand what's going on. And that's all the backup stuff, the information back here. So for us as a committee, in my responsibility, I just want to make sure we had the information so that when the time comes that we have to do something, we're prepared to do it. The best balance of options. There's state level structural things that are being considered, and even inside the EMS organizations themselves, they're looking at different ways of doing things. So a lot of different approaches at various levels. So more to follow on this. Really, thank you so much. There is this follow-on event, so if you can participate in that, that would be wonderful. Does anyone have any questions based on that? Yes, sir.
So just a comment, you were there when we started, when Hampton had their issues. We had EMS services 5 minutes away. Then there was an event in Fairhaven where they essentially lost their certification in the state because they didn't have any members there. And New York State found out we were being served by over the border. And we went through the process of figuring out how we could provide those services. And thank God for Skeensboro and Cambridge, as the CON for the county, is that we're able to fill the gap. But in us as a small town on the border, we went from 5-minute response time to 35 to 40-minute response time. Nothing on you. I mean, it takes time for someone to get to the shop and you can get on and leave and come over the roads to Hampton. But it was very expensive for us to even consider getting our own CON. And even that would have to include bringing the Vermont squads in. And they froze because there's no reciprocity from New York State from Vermont to New York. Vermont to New York State people who are already trained and actually probably have more training and requirements than they do in New York State. They would have to go through the certification process again. On the other hand, like in Granville, they have reciprocity so they can go to Vermont and make calls there. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things that have to take place, but it was a shock on what it costed for a small town to get coverage and to get a CON. We actually would have had to run our own ambulance service. as a town. Fiscally impossible.
First of all, I apologize for being late. Came excited to hear and see everybody, hear from all the different rescue squads. I had a flat tire and no cell service. I had to wander around until I could get a thing on my phone, hit the beaver, a dead beaver that was laying next to Carter's pond, which scared me to death. You know, and thankfully I had back and was able to my car back on, so I got it. So
I'm glad you could safely make it.
I apologize, but I really want to thank all of the rescue squads for everything they do. There's not a day that goes by that we haven't had some horrific event. Or, just a natural call for so it's a wide gamut of calls that you're getting. And you know, it's a long ways away from the stuff from the John. And I think one of the original rescue squads was the fallen purse that they put into operation in the 1960s. We've come a long ways. Although there was that I talked about where we're gonna go, whether it's the parlor or the hospital. You know, so the training that you all had drives me crazy that we can only go for mileage. And the amount of training and expertise that we give to our communities, and yet that's not going. Doesn't make any sense for me. Basically, thank you everyone for coming and doing what you're doing. And as a county, we're privileged to be helping, supporting, you know, whatever it is.
Any other questions, comments? Any other business for it? Hearing, seeing none, we're adjourned. Thank you.